viewing device that does not emit a beam, and you see something going wrong, then you know it's generating light, heat, to be picked up by the infrared camera. So you'd have to know whether it's a type of camera that emits a beam or doesn't emit a beam. I don't know from what you've told me.
These would not emit a beam. They were used by the military, for night battle type of situation. Mm-hmm. So I doubt if they would, emit a beam. Yeah. But I tell you, and I've seen some of those people. People will send me videos and say, look at these orbs I got with my infrared camera. Well, I hate that. I don't want to. Like I said, photography's been my passion since I was a kid also, besides broadcasting. I don't want to sit there and tell them, hey, I hate to say it, either you're catching your porch light at night and you're moving the camera around, or you're catching little bugs that look like orbs.
Well, the bugs wouldn't show up unless they're illuminated.
Yeah. But, all I can say is, I had
a run-in with orbs back in the latter 90s when it suddenly became de rigueur for photographers to talk about getting photographs of orbs. It would appear in various places, and I was sent some pictures taken by one guy who would go out to a cemetery near a road and just take pictures in various directions. Now, he was using a flash, so you could tell this because you could see the nearby trees and stuff like that. And at various places in any picture, these bright spots of light, various sizes and shape, and typically one shape, but various sizes. He asked me, this guy who contacted me about this, asked if he said he was getting these orb images, and he wondered if there was something wrong with his camera. So I suggested some tests he could make to find out if there were light leaks or something that could be causing light to get onto the film, which wasn't something that he could see. He only got these pictures. Well, let me cut to the chase. He sent me a second letter some weeks later saying that he realized that he got most of these orbs when his kids were jumping up and down on the floor. And it took me about 3 microseconds to realize what he was talking about now, because this was taken with one of the then newfangled small cameras where you have a built-in, it's a small camera with a bright flash that's only like half an inch away from the aperture that the light goes into. And so something that's only a couple inches in front of the camera can reflect light from the flash into the lens. And I told him about that and to try to take pictures where there wasn't any particles. And I did it myself. I got one of these little cameras and took some pictures lying on the floor and pounding the floor with my fist. I was pounding on a rug and taking a picture right through the area where the dust particles were, and I got orbs galore. So I've told people, if you're going to talk about photographing orbs, make sure you do it with a camera that doesn't have a flash. Also, the type of orbs that you're really interested in are the ones that you can see by eye. They're generating without the camera flash, because they're generating their own light. People have sent me photos which they claim show light streaking along or traveling along without any flash at all. So there are apparently real orbs there. As a matter of fact, I've got one on my website, and it's from the state of Washington now, I come to think of it, where a guy was taking pictures of his landscape near his house, and he's taking a picture of some flowers around the base of a tree, and this red, sort of like a circle, a red circular area, sizable, about would be the size of a baseball or a basketball or something like that, if it were a solid thing. He said he saw that he's about to ready to take a picture of the tree. He sees this red thing come up out of the ground, takes a picture of it, watches it go up to about 12 or 15 feet of altitude, and then zip off.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty weird.
Yeah, I remember, too, people sending me pictures of rods.
Rocks?
Rods, RODS.
Oh,
They're kind of like orbs, but they were like moving around every which way, and they kind of streak. But they were, it moved, clearly moving.
Yeah, mostly like insects traveling along and being caught by the flash.
Probably. Now, again, before I let you off, why don't you tell everybody again your website, how they can find you on Facebook, and your books, and where they can find your books there, Bruce.
Okay. The website is brumac.mysite.com. 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 You'll find 100 megabytes worth of articles to read on that. And my email is brumac@compuserve.com. BRUMAC at CompuServe, COMPUSERVE. Probably one of the oldest running email addresses on the net. So it goes way back to 1985, I think.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that. I remember, when I had CompuServe back then.
Then I have the big book, the FBI CIA UFO Connection, which is available on Amazon. And you just look up my name and you'll get all the books listed. Another one is The Legacy of 1952, the year of the UFO. And the one I mentioned took place in the state of Washington, the Kenneth Arnold sighting, 3 minutes in June. I emphasize 3 minutes because his sighting lasted 3 minutes, and during that 3 minutes he got information out of the sighting that literally blows your mind, especially in the present context. You can wonder how it's taking so long to really understand what happened when he saw these things. But anyway, I invite you can also go put my name in the URL slot for Facebook and go and look at what's happening on my Facebook.
Oh, yeah. I will say this. I hope there's actually some type of disclosure. I'm going on 68. I want to see something before I pass on. I just don't know if the government, they have lied so much, so long, that I think it'd be so hard for them to come out and admit that we're being visited unless something major happens. And sometimes you mentioned, like when you were a kid, that one movie where, the UFO lands and then, he comes out and the huge robot comes out and then the military surrounds the UFO and the first thing they do is they shoot.
Stay there, so still.
Yeah, they shoot the alien and then the robot starts, disintegrating all the military equipment and the men around him.
Short.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder if a UFO did come down, if our military would react the same way. Now, I have a funny feeling they might.
They probably defer to whatever their leaders would say they should do, although individuals might well panic and realize that our pea shooters can't compare with their dematerializers or whatever they use. Suddenly vanish from one place and reappear somewhere else.
Yeah, that would be one bad way to disappear from the planet, though.
That's the way it appears on the radar screen, and has ever since the first detections of radar. A radar screen in the old days had a line rotating around a center point, and each time the line went past a radar target, you would get a blip, a bright spot. And this would take maybe 10 or 15 seconds to go around once, and then if there's a bright spot there, you got a target, and 10 or 15 seconds later, it goes past that area again, and you get another bright spot, but maybe it's moved a little bit. And then the third sweep of the radar, it's moved a little bit farther, and so you can calculate how fast it's going by how far it moved, and from one sweep to the next. But with these things, it's typical to say it'll go out and pick up in one sweep, and then when the sweep thing comes around the next time, there's nothing there. But there is something somewhere else, as if the object had moved some considerable distance in just the time of one radar sweep.
And that, we don't have the technology, I don't think, for that to happen. I will say this, my friend, again, who was a vice president of Republic Airlines, he was going to be a lifer. He was a colonel during Vietnam. He was planning to stay in the Air Force. But after he reported that UFO, he was told that his military career, when his enlistment was up, that maybe he should just, go civilian, with the airline or something, because he was told he would probably be passed over for promotions.
Mm-hmm. The Republic Airlines played a role in early Air Force investigations, by the way. They're mentioned by this Captain Ruppelt, who wrote the book, the Report on Unidentified Flying Objects. This book was published in 1955. He was the head of Project Blue Book in 51 and 52 and 53. And he talks about Republic Airlines people sitting in on some meetings when they were trying to decide what to do about these UFOs.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. I know he advised all the pilots, that if you see a UFO, just keep your mouth shut, don't report it. Whatever you do, don't report it over the radio. If you do, that's the end of your career.
Uh-huh.
So,
well, that's like at the beginning of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember the beginning of that?
Oh, yeah.
Where the airplane is flying along and the guy in the aircraft sees something weird, a UFO, and he calls into headquarters and says, "Do you have anything on radar?" And they say, I don't remember what they said, but the way this little sequence ends up, the radar guy says, "Do you want to make an official report of this?" And the pilot says, "Nope."
Yeah, it's a smart move, because if you do, that would have been the end of it. But, yeah,
right.
it just still reminds me, though, like what he mentioned when he landed, how the CIA was there waiting for him and broke up the crew and interrogated them for hours and hours, each one of them. And, and basically, at one point, he didn't care anymore when he was telling me all this stuff. But, he was just saying that, the threats they were made, that if they would open their mouth, things could happen very bad to them. And, that's, going on in, towards the end of Vietnam era. So, I mean, I still, I find it very surprising that the Navy has stepped up. I'm surprised the Air Force hasn't stepped up. And, especially since now they're going to have they're going to be part of the Space Force, one of their divisions.
Yeah, I suppose. There's been some evidence that there was a black Space Force already. I heard about a so-called black shuttle way back in 1980.
I wouldn't doubt it. I think it's so much more advanced than what we are led to believe. But, I don't know. It scares. And one thing I will say before I let you go, back years ago when I was getting reports from people calling up and saying they saw a UFO, and I even asked Peter Davenport this at one time, maybe a year ago on the show. I said, what was the average size of these UFOs, back going 20 years ago or whatever? And it was like maybe 100 feet in diameter, 80 feet in diameter. What's really strange? All of a sudden it went from 80 to 100 feet to now they're big as a Walmart store and they're triangle. Have you been hearing stuff like that too?
Oh, I haven't heard anything as big. I have heard about big things, yeah. Not as popular as I if you had asked me that question, I would have said 10 to 30 feet, maybe up to 100 feet. Going back to Kenneth Arnold's sighting in 1947, he estimated the size being 60 to 100 feet.
Yeah, that's what I used to hear. I had an author, he wrote a book about Aurora, a UFO that supposedly crashed in the late 1890s or something in Texas. But his father, and I can't remember what state or city, town it was a police dispatcher. And we were talking about this for about a half an hour before we went on the air. And then I brought it up during the air. So we talked about it. They had a report, supposedly in this little town, that a UFO touched down in the hospital parking lot for a short period of time. They sent out their police, which they probably had to wake up their officers because it was late at night to go check it out. And by the time they got there, there was no UFO. But around about an 80-foot, circle was burnt into the asphalt, and it was still smoking when the law enforcement got there. And then they noticed like little mercury droplets around that burn area. Now, it was interesting because they naturally then contacted the military,